Hello and welcome to the review, the responses we got for the 10 questions for atheists.
What is going on with my camera?
They have properly been drinking and on drugs, so these answers are probably going to get better as they progress.
Getting massacred.
Just want to make sure that I can be heard, essentially.
What are you guys talking about?
Well, a lot of people are going to hate this, but typically I just use the term atheist.
You know, I think there's only the natural world. Reality is exhausted by nature.
That's the best place. That's the best place ever. I'm really happy with that.
We're going to get like
This is a philosophy channel now, and they're going to be reviewing this, so they will pick on you.
These questions really sound like they're written by a theist, right?
Hello and welcome to the review of the 10 questions for atheists. I'm Joe.
And I'm Mr. Meesey.
And today we are going to be covering off question 3. Now, question 3 was sort of a general sort of fact-finding thing, where it's asking people if they were brought up in a religious family or a religious area and how your family reacted to you being an atheist. And if you weren't, if you had always been an atheist, what were your first interactions with theists like, especially in incredibly religious ones? Like we did with the first question on the questions for theists, this isn't really one for us to have much of a say on. It's more letting you see other people's experiences. So a lot of theists might have a very singular view of how people became atheists or why they're atheists. Hopefully, this will show them that actually people come to the position of being an atheist through different means. And at the end of the stream, we'll tell you our story as well.
Perfect.
So, without much further ado, here are all the stories from the video responses we got. Question 3. Were you brought up in a religious area or with a religious family? How did those people around you react to you coming out as an atheist? If you grew up in a non-religious area and with a non-religious family, how were your first interactions with heavily religious people?
Oh, okay, let me Oh, no, I'm not sorry. That is hilarious. I love Joe's face. He looks like he's like either shouting at like someone he doesn't like, or that's gonna be half the stream is me laughing at Joe's face. I apologize, Joe. Philip Muller, my adversary, my enemy, my nemesis, has asked, when did you finally realize that religion is a mental illness? I am not going to touch on that here because that's just going to open a can of worms. And Icarus, that is actually Philip's fault that he brought that up. Now I'm not going to stop thinking about that and probably tweet about it and get aggressively dogpiled by a bunch of people who think that religion is a mental illness. So, and yes, so Philip's just said to me as well, oh you're right, Luke, it is fun to see you react whilst pretending that nothing is going on, because when he's streaming with Answers to Reason and I'm in the chat, I'll just chat shit in the chat and I'll like say something that makes him laugh and just see him like kind of trying not to burst out laughing, and he's just done it to me. So there we go, fair play, well played, Philip. Good job. Anyway, the question. Okay, what question are we on anyway? Question 3? Question 4? Question 3. Yes, question. I didn't realise it was going to be the sort of stream where I'm just laughing more than talking. Was I brought up in a religious household? No. Religious area? No, probably not. I wouldn't say so. I think probably I got brought up in a religious school, but it was like the best school in the area. I think that's why my parents sent me to it. It wasn't like a private school or anything. It was just a regular school, but it was just the best school that was around. And it was CEV, so they had to, you know, kind of enroll me in the church and stuff, you know, show that I was going to church in order for me to go there at that time. My family weren't particularly religious. I think my mum's probably best described as being agnostic, although leaning towards like atheist, so end of agnostic. So she's more not convinced than she is convinced. But she, particularly around difficult times when she's bereaved, will have say things like, "Oh, you know, they're in a better place," or stuff like that. So yeah, not a religious family, but a religious school, which I think is probably like a core place, you know, where you do start your socializing and start your thoughts about it. My dad wasn't religious at all, so interactions with heavily religious people. I guess my first proper interaction with someone heavily religious was probably that girlfriend that I mentioned. She was part of a charismatic church. Sorry, the chat is really distracting. So, hi Brina, nice to see you here. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you joining us tonight. And I'm looking forward to you joining Answers and Reason. That's going to be a really exciting stream. So yeah, I'll definitely be involved in that as much as I can. She was quite heavily religious. I'm not sure if she was young Earth creationist. I don't think so, but she was certainly quite strongly religious. So that was an interesting thing. I think probably I understood her views quite well, which meant that, and I have a couple of religious friends, like the ones I've spoken to on my channel and stuff. So, you know, it's like I haven't been cut off from religion in any way, in terms of like, you know, just because I didn't grow up in a religious area. And I think that that's allowed me to kind of understand where they're coming from in their beliefs and stuff like that. So yeah, it's never been hostile, except when I was annoying, maybe debate me bro atheist at university, start university. Yeah. And Brina says pro dog piling Luke, even if we agree that religion is not a mental illness. Please don't. that literally got me to leave Twitter for like a week because I was just like, no, I can't handle this. So I'd appreciate if you dogpile me in a nice way. Just, you know, you go on my messages, be like, Luke, you're great. We support you in every single way. We understand every argument you make. that kind of dogpiling I can get behind.
So yeah, my family was Christian, just as myself, though not something very seriously. My mother was absolutely okay with me not believing in the Bible anymore when I lost faith in that. And my grandfather was absolutely okay with it as well. And my grandmother, she was okay with me not being a Christian, though she feared so much for my soul that she broke down and cried, which resulted in me actually getting confirmated. Anyways, my first real experience with really religious people must have been in summer camps, where I was at Christian summer camps. But not something I really remember that much. I enjoyed my time there. So, yeah.
Yes, I was. Jamaica is predominantly religious, and Christianity is the religion that's engraved within our culture. My household wasn't always religious. If they were passive or lukewarm about it. But I started to attend church at a young age, and I even got baptized at a young age. I'm pretty sure my change of worldview is obvious to those closest to me, but I haven't received much of anything from them, which makes me one of the lucky ones, considering the situation of other deconverted Christians that came out the closet, Muslims, and other deconverted religious folks.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, I was brought up, as I mentioned, in a religious family, and I know it's not this way for everybody, but leaving Christianity was like, it was like a seriously psychologically destabilizing event in my life. Like I know it's not that way for everybody, but you know, like I said, it was really an integral part of my life. And you know, I have multiple family members in ministry, and no, they did not take it well. So, and neither did my girlfriend's side of the family, who are my in-laws now. yeah, no one took it well. But for my parents, you know, who I'm like very close to, you know, it wasn't really their fault. Like I wasn't really tactful about it. I just kind of came out guns blazing, and I'm you know, the oldest in the family, so that didn't help. And no one in my extended family is an atheist. Um, yeah, and for my parents, you know, I wish I would have rolled it out more slowly, you know, or like taken a stop at like a more liberal form of Christianity. Um, but you know, at the time, I felt like I was lying, you know, like it really weighed on my conscience to go to church when I was like not believing. And you know, I was also really attuned to the harmful aspects of religion when I first deconverted. So, you know, I didn't pull any punches, and they were devastated, and it led to a really tough period. But fortunately, it was temporary. But yeah, no, I love my family. So anyway, what about you? You're muted, Darren.
Yeah, like so, like it was kind of like nominally Christian, but like in terms of area, like no, it's like a lot of people were of the same sort, were just like they're, you know, they'll call themselves Christian, but it wasn't anything actually that publicly significant in people's lives. And so like kind of like when I just become like an agnostic or atheist or whatever label, wasn't that big a deal, especially to everyone around me. Just kind of growing up as a millennial, like most of the people just kind of like had that tendency to, and there was no resistance to it because yeah, it just wasn't a religious area. And how are your first interactions with heavily religious people? They weirded me out. Like honestly, when I saw people where it's like, oh, this is where it's like they made public like the significance of their like commitments to this sort of worldview, and I thought it was strange, but also interesting.
Well,
yeah, my parents were Catholic, but after they split up, my mom sort of became this sort of an agnostic, right? My dad would still remain Catholic, but they were never super religious, never really strict, right? Like there were sort of like loose religious values in the household. I say was, like I'm in college or some shit. I'm still a fucking high schooler. Anyway, yeah, it was like sort of a lukewarm Christian upbringing, but nothing super fundamentalist or anything like that. And I haven't really come out as a no holds barred atheist yet to my family. I'm guessing it would go over well. I don't think it would be a huge deal, but I haven't done so yet. To my friends, though, it was quite a surprise because I'm probably gonna out myself here, but I have a lot of political and ethical views that a lot of people would expect to be more religious in nature, right? And so most of my friends thought I was like a trad cath because of my social views, and they were very surprised when I revealed that I was actually an atheist. So there's that. A lot of people who I'm friends with did not expect me to be an atheist. They expected me to be some sort of Catholic traditionalist, but aside from that, no real notable interactions that have come out of me revealing myself to be an atheotard.
Okay.
My family was always very divided on religion. One family member always leaned Catholic, but was never outspoken about that stance. Another member never showed any inclination toward religious belief until marriage. After marriage, this person was a practicing Catholic, but never made religion an issue. This person never talked about beliefs, so I was never certain what this person's thoughts were on the subject, and the person never indicated any desire to talk about it. Two other family members were non-religious, one very vocal about it. I raised my children to believe, and all were adults when I deconverted. Of my 3 children, one is an atheist, one is a strong believer, and one expresses belief, but I'm uncertain as to what that belief is. My husband is still a believer, but I was the one that always drove the train on our church involvement. Since I stopped believing, he does believe, but he just watches an online service once a week. It's not like when I had us going to church twice on Sunday and to every church event. How did they react? 3 were glad that I finally saw reason. 5 expressed no opinions openly, though one expressed subtle hints at having a strong opinion. The only people who expressed negative opinions about my deconversion were several people I used to go to church with and I used to count as friends. Only one friend that I used to go to church with is still friends with me.
Answer to that question, no, I was never really brought up in a religious family. That's not to say that there weren't people in my sort of extended family who weren't, there were religious people within the family, but not necessarily in my immediate household. I mean, my grandmother was a churchgoer. My great auntie was very much a churchgoer. Do you know what the weird thing is? To this day, like, I mean, my mum and my stepfather would probably be like the closest people to family-wise. I mean, to this day, even though they know I'm an atheist or whatever, no issues there whatsoever. No issues there. I don't even know that we've really sat down and talked. Don't think I've ever really sat there and talked about their actual beliefs, whether they believe in God or whatever, or they have a, I don't think this is a topic we've ever really seriously discussed. First, heavy introductions to heavily, religious people. I think I really didn't get it until I just found it a bit weird. But I think when around 4 years ago, when I first started coming to the internet, that was definitely a fucking eye-opener when I was really started to be exposed to people like, young Earth creationists and, flat earthers as well, who a lot of them are very religious. That was definitely a culture shock. So,
Savage, we'll start with you this time. We'll go and we'll do it backwards. So this time we'll go first with you.
So I think my family kind of realized that it was happening when they saw me double down. Because kind of half of my family was already atheist, and it's kind of a cycle that happens among a lot of atheists. I'm sure you guys know that it's like you start out religious and you start to see holes that are getting poked in it, and then it's no, throw on extra layers. I'm gonna double down, and then pretty soon you realize that there's no patching the holes. And so I think my family kind of saw me going through that. And there was some of my family that just denied it was happening. And that side of the family, after I did kind of fully come out as an atheist, I don't think I ever said to my family, look, I'm an atheist, until there was a wedding. And that member of the family asked me to deliver a gospel reading at the wedding. And I said yes. When they were will you do a reading at the wedding? Assuming that it was something from Proverbs or something that was just a good story. And it wasn't. And it was this whole thing about, I forget what reading it was, but I was seriously, you want me to read this? This is disrespectful to me to even say this. And there was kind of a little bit of an upset about it, and I ended up doing the reading anyway because I didn't want to mess up their freaking wedding, but I wasn't happy about it. And that was kind of when I came out. That was the only bad coming out. But besides that, I have a friend, one of my good friends is a pastor. It's still working pastor, preaching pastor. And for the most part, I know it's kind of a touchy subject, but it's in some ways, where I live, there has been this sort of response to the LGBTQ community. If you're not familiar, I'm a member of the LGBTQ community. And there's this idea within Christianity where it's love the sinner and hate the sin, right? Because being gay is a sin. And in my mind, I'm okay, well, I can love the Christian and hate the Christianity. And I don't know how, but I'm able to do that. And I'm not saying that everybody is able to do that, but I am. So
right.
That's pass.
Willis.
So not a religious family. accepting what I said earlier on. Not a particularly religious area. Obviously, most of the UK, hypothetically, I'm looking forward to the census results coming out in a few months, but most of the UK would say that they're Christian, although most of them would say they're Christian rather than acting Christian or going to church. Certainly the numbers going to church go down. There wasn't really a big coming out as an atheist because I'm a gobshite, and it's always been quite obvious that I don't believe in any God. In terms of interactions with heavily religious people, so it started in infant school, junior school with me sort of refusing to bow my head for a prayer, and it went from there were a few frowns and I was the only person doing it to it was just accepted I wasn't going to close my eyes or bow my head, and eventually quite a lot of other people did the same. That carried on until as far as I think I was in year 9. I guess you call that 9th grade in the US. I'm not sure, but sort of
14, 15.
in another, yeah. So in another 2 years, we're doing our first sort of important set of exams, and so over here there was a group called Question Mark. They're sort of so it's Alpha Church, so they're like yeah. So like, I think they're also called King's Church, but it's like British evangelicals, and they disguise it quite well. And they're the ones they send out. They're young and they're cool, and like maybe they smoke pot one time, woohoo type of thing. And me and a couple of other people that sat together at school said, "Why are you coming in and why are you trying to change our minds?" And in front of the whole school, like 1,200 people, this happy clappy guy said, "We're not trying to change your minds. We're just trying to influence your minds." And me and my friends were like, yeah. So that was it, and we didn't allow ourselves to be influenced there. I tried to start an atheist club at school to counteract what they were doing with the, I'll be honest, cringeworthy slogan of AC, it's electric. What can I tell you? I was 14. It was 1994. But yeah, so that was kind of how that one went for me.
Simos, you're next in line.
Okay. I wasn't brought up in a religious family. My father was an atheist, and he made sure that religion wasn't a thing in the house. How do people react to coming out? Yeah, people, because I was quite young, a lot of parents banned kids from coming to my parties, and teachers generally gave me bad grades and shit like that because I was outspoken about it. This is slightly older than Dr. Willis there, or Mr. Willis there. So this is the 70s. But that was okay. I kind of thrived on the conflict and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to really enjoy shocking kids at school with, telling them what, how stupid their beliefs about religion were. So that was always good fun because I get a lot of stick back for it. And first interactions, well, no, they were fun. I remember getting off with the local priest daughter, and then getting in trouble when I was about 12 or 13. And I really enjoyed that. So I've always had very positive feedback from.
When you say getting her in trouble, like I don't want to go too far, but she didn't need an exorcism after that, did she?
I don't know. We weren't allowed to see each other. That's all I know. But I moved on to
Brina,
the local.
Is it Brina or
Brianna? Heavy
Brianna?
metal, and that was enough. Anyway, there we go. Thanks.
It's Brina. Like it's short for Sabrina. That's my full name.
Brina, thank you
Well,
very
you're
much for
teenage
joining.
bitch.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you too.
We'll not do the whole recap or we'll be bloody here all night. But would you like
Right,
to
that's
answer
fine.
this question? Because the way you've popped in, you're next after Simos.
Hold on. What was the question?
Can you see it on screen?
Oh, is it if? Hold on. Were you brought up in a religious area? Okay. Yeah, I grew up in a small town in Ohio, and it's like not normalized in any sense of the word to not believe a God exists. You just believed God existed, and you were a Christian. So the idea of going against that is extremely alarming to like family members and neighbors and classmates. I remember we actually had like somebody who was out as an atheist in my high school. One person, well, it wasn't one person, it was one family, like them and their siblings, and they were extremely ostracized because of it, if that gives you any indication of like where I grew up. So yeah, I'm an atheist now, so completely out of that, but that's kind of the environment that I grew up in.
Well, that puts me next. And brought up in a religious area or family, as I said earlier, with the Salvation Army and all. It would have been religious, but like what Willis says, being in the UK here, mostly a UK-based panel here, or well, European anyway. So it's not as strong over here, So even though my family was religious, when I was leaving religion, my mum was just raising me, and my mum was very supportive of it. She was always pushing me in the ask questions, skeptic sort of, mindset regardless. So I don't think it was a surprise to her. I would refer to her as a spiritual Christian. As I say, she doesn't like going to church, but she does believe in Christ and heaven and that sort of thing. So, whatever way you want to say it. But yeah, she was always very supportive of me. Christian friends would come in and ask questions, I remember, and she laughed and got up and walked out because it was like, he knows the Bible better than you. You have fun. She just went off and did the dinner or whatever. So, yeah, we were lucky here. I have been lucky enough in that respect. Interactions with heavily religious people. Yeah, the internet. Thanks, fucking brilliant for all of you motherfuckers on the internet. Crazy Americans and young Earth creationists. What the fuck, like?
Those are the people where like Brina and I live, though. Like for real, though. Like that's like we live with those people, like down the street.
My first interaction, the worst one was probably with a Calvinist, and it may have been my first time. Well, there's a few Calvinists I've been talking to, but I wouldn't have went into a debate, sort of, me on him, sort of, context, and doing one for, I can't remember what the channel was, and they invited me on to talk to a Christian. That's all the information I got, was he's a Christian, and it turned out he was a Calvinist, and he went down the whole pedal route and the free will route and all this here, and yeah, that was.
It's also
hang on a second. One slight correction though to what Mathpig said there. I'm not in the EU. I'm not European. Obviously, I live.
I
in
said
the UK.
UK or European. I said UK or European.
Oh, please don't make me cry.
Fabio's in the room.
Touchy subject.
Obviously.
What was Brina saying?
I was just gonna say that in the environment that I grew up in, it was normalized in the school to push back against evolution, like being a young Earth creationist. In fact, when I was in 8th grade, I specifically remember doing live reports, like with the PowerPoint that we had to do on evolution, and I was one of the many students in that class that pushed back against the idea of evolution because that's what was normalized and that's what was allowed in our school system.
Jesus
we were taught in my biology class in high school, we were taught evolution like right alongside with creationism. It was like, oh, if we're going to talk about evolution, we're going to spend
just not even allowed, like looking back on it, because I went to a public school, like that shouldn't have even been.
Me too, though.
Like
it was in what's the Texas, not Texas Instruments, it's the other one that has the science and whatever textbooks. It's in the standard textbook. It's in the standard textbook.
And I'm not even in the South. I'm in Ohio, so
1/3 time for intelligent design, 1/3 time for flying spaghetti monsterism, and 1/3 time for logical conjecture based on an overwhelming preponderance of physical evidence. And when I read that, and I think that was Kansas, wasn't it? That was the open letter to the Kansas School Board, circa 1997, 1998, pushing back against
Kansas
young Earth creation.
Kansas City did put evolution on trial.
So it was around that time, but it was when the school board had a lot of YECs elected to the board, and they were teaching this, so they weren't allowed to teach creationism, so they disguised it as intelligent design, right? And then so that was why the guy invented Pastafarianism. And he said that, the whole letter was stunning. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, I strongly recommend that you Google Pastafarianism open letter to the Kansas School Board. Go to the toilet before you read it because you are going to piss yourself laughing. I literally can't read the end of the letter without laughing. But I'm going to try my best to get the sentence out now from memory. If I crack up laughing, I'm sorry. I do find it really funny. So in summary, I think we all look forward to when these three theories are given equal time in our classrooms. 1/3 time for intelligent design, 1/3 time for flying spaghetti monsterism, and 1/3 time for logical conjecture based on an overwhelming preponderance of physical evidence. And it's taken me 20 years to be able to say that without laughing, because it's just flawless, right? It's like, just take your argument and just fuck clean off. Yeah, like I can make up bullshit and claim it as science as well, right? Here's some graphs that show that I'm right and you're wrong. It really pisses me off, and I'm going to stop ranting. But I've got.
I was just going to say, who's up next, Stephen? You up next?
Can I just ask you a question though? And like, I know I'm dragging it out. I will be as quick as I can. But like, obviously, I never had that God doesn't exist epiphany because I didn't believe. When you realised. Did it feel like finding out that Father Christmas wasn't real, or like there was no tooth fairy? You know, like how did it feel? Did you feel empty or relieved? Or,
well, we don't know. It could be one of the next questions that he asks.
Oh, could it be?
I have a very good answer for that.
Well, we will see. All of us have not watched this, so we will see. We will wait. But Phoebe, you're next then. Stephen next. Phoebe next. One of you two.
Don't forget that question, because I will forget to answer it if you don't ask it again.
I've lost track because there's been so many people talking out of turn.
Whoever
I want to
you
answer
actually,
it too, so I'll remember.
No, I did say mine said I was supported and stuff. So that's
it's Stephen.
Stephen.
I grew up in a moderately religious household, religious area. Like there's, I think like 6, maybe 7 churches in my kind of like smaller county where like 10,000 people maybe. I mean, like they were there, but like I never went to church as like a child, apart from like on like your occasions. How did people around me like react? With like, I do kind of like to commonly say that like I'm fortunately one of the very few who have like the best possible reaction to like saying that you're an atheist, which is nobody cared.
Yep.
Nobody gave a fuck. I say unfortunately, obviously, because like there's so many stories of so many people who have been like ostracized from their families or kicked out of their family homes, or lost contact with friends or family members because they don't believe in the same invisible sky daddy as they do. Look, I'm making light of it, but it is obviously it is obviously like a super serious issue and stuff like that. But no, I literally had like the best possible reaction to telling people that I was an atheist. Just nobody cared.
Yeah. That'll put Phoebe next. Dying to talk, Phoebe.
So was I brought up in a religious area or family? Well, my mother, yes. My father, no. My father couldn't give 2 flying spaghetti monsters about religion of any kind. Whereas my mother is an Anglican, which is why I was an Anglican. Went to an Anglican school all the way through. So I started off at just a regular school. Then I went to a school with a church attached to it. And then I went to a school with a chapel attached to it. So, it built itself up. And how did they react to me coming out as atheist? Well, my mother reacted, she went, well, you're finding who you are when I came out as Jewish, because that was the first thing that happened. And then a whole confluence of things that you can go and check out on Ed's channel.
Oh, Ed does a great video with Phoebe. You really should see Ed's video with Phoebe. It's brilliant.
Where I talk about certain things that you should go and watch in that video. But yes, that's an ongoing joke between Mathpig and I.
I'm going to add that to the bot. Now, the bot's not on, but I'm going to add that to the bot. We're just going to put in, check out Ed's channel or some fucking, you fucking bitch. Right, go on.
But yes, and how did they react to me coming out as an atheist? Well, my mother said, well, at least you're not in, ethno-nationalism anymore. So I'll take that as, the price you pay.
Fabio, the best for last.
So it's going to be yes to the first question. And about the second question, nobody gave a shit. And mostly because around here, people do not give a shit. And there is also the fact that I'm not, and I wasn't an annoying cunt about it. You know, just like like vegetarians or like vegetarians or vegan do. You know, I mean, if somebody invites me to a wedding, I go to the wedding. If I have to go to a funeral, I go to a funeral, and that's it. You know, because I don't care really. I mean, the fact that I go to those ceremonies is because, you know, people invite me. I like the people, and I go there. I just don't put a big fuss about it. I think it's counterproductive. It's annoying to everybody, including you. And really, I mean, I don't want to be like the guy that everybody knows is a fucking vegan, because that's the first thing it tells you, that he's a vegan. So that's it. There is another thing I want to say about, you know, because people talked about young earth creationism and stuff like that. I just want to point out that I live in a country where we have the fucking Vatican around here, right? So...
Well, you live in your country. That's another country. That's another country.
No. I'm getting there. Some years ago, the bloody Pope, and I mean the Nazi one, the one which is not here anymore.
Joseph Ratzinger.
He was invited to speak in a university. The professors and the students, they made such a fuss about it that he was uninvited. So to me, so to me, hearing that in 2021, young earth creationism and not evolution is actually taught in schools, it's fucking amazing. It blows my fucking mind. It makes me laugh like there is no tomorrow. I mean, I listen to that. I listen to Ricky Gervais. It's the same thing. I'm having a huge laugh.
But see, here's the thing about it that's like so kind of messed up to me. Is like, you think it's funny, but
it's super funny.
And I don't disagree with you.
Whenever you're finished, Savage, just let me know so I can talk on my own channel. Okay, go ahead.
Thanks. So, the thing about it is that here, like in American schools, like that actually takes up like a good amount of our freaking time. Like I was saying about when in my biology class, that amount of like learning that crap that's useless fucking bullshit.
No, Savage, I'm sorry to interrupt you, you know, and I don't want to sound, like a vegan, right? But the main problem is that you, in the US, you are lazy, and you're wrong in that approach. Totally wrong. Again,
you know, I'm a self-hating American, right?
No, but listen, do you know what it takes to tell the Pope not to come to speak in a university after he has been invited?
Yeah, no.
Do
like,
you have any fucking idea?
Yeah.
So do you think that it's easier to tell the Pope, oh no, listen, I mean, you're not welcome here? Or is it harder to actually elect some people in the school boards which have half a brain and say, you know, guys, fuck off? What among those two things, which one do you think it's harder to do?
Finding people with half a brain in America is gonna be hard.
No, it's hard. Listen again. I'm really sorry if I sound harsh. It's hard if you're lazy.
I mean,
if you just
what
keep
Italians are like for changing your mind when it comes to Nazis.
Right? Yeah, it is true.
It
is. I mean, yeah.
The lobby's just so strong, though, in America, right? Like, all the money, like, atheism's got no money.
There's only two Americans on the panel.
Religion's got loads of money.
The two Americans on the panel should discuss the American education system, I feel so. And after that, I'm not even going to mention what I was going to say because it's not even relevant to the conversation anymore. And then we're going to go on to the next question. We're going to go Sleepy Joe, hits play.
My point is that it's just really sad for like American kids that like that time could be used for better things. That was my point.
Right. And I don't think it's that easy to actually find somebody who has, I guess I'll use the quote, half a brain on the school board when you're limited to a very specific area and there's only a certain amount of people that are there that are in that profession. And many of those people are a product of being brainwashed in the same way that those children are going to become a product of it.
Yeah. Okay. So
my aunt worked.
This to me seems the same approach that you have towards guns in the U.S. It is the unsolvable problem that everybody in the world has already solved. Yeah, but it's impossible to solve. Okay, who's got that problem?
I never said it's not.
We're not saying that
it's impossible to solve. I don't think that at all. I don't think it's
like,
impossible.
Like, for instance, my aunt spent a year and a half working on a committee to try and find a new person to like run the school board. And the person that they found in the end,
thanks for coming, Danish Debater,
to do it for 2 years. And that was it.
It's difficult when
nobody wants the job.
Yeah. And it's difficult when, as a non-religious person, you are a marginalized group here. Like, it's not that easy when you are constantly getting pushed down. Like, I can't even, when I was working at a school, I took atheist stickers off of my car because I was worried about how that would present. I was worried if I could lose my job or get like, negative feedback from my kids' parents and stuff. So like, it's not that easy to just rise above when you are trying to tackle a system that has religion so ingrained in its policies and in government.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, where you live, like no one cares, but like here, like for some fucking reason, they fucking care, and it's really
like my aunt. That's
it's
right. We'll
sad.
bring it back a wee bit. This is slightly irrelevant now, but my auntie I would have considered a religious person. She wouldn't have went to church all the time and all that there, but she was involved with the Salvation Army. She would have helped out and gone the odd time. More so than just Christmas and funerals. But towards the end, when she got very, very sick and ended, she'd seen the Presbyterian minister give an awful service for my grandfather and talk about him for 10 minutes and talk to us about going to hell for 45. They had a conversation with him afterwards, and then when her mother died, which would be my nanny, they spent maybe 20 minutes, half an hour on my nanny, and the rest of the hour, you're going to fucking hell. So she had it in what in America I think you should refer to as a funeral home. She had no religious ceremony at all. It was in the funeral home, go and get cremated. And she's a religious person. So that's how, it's more cultural over here. It really is a lot more cultural over here than it would be. We're adamant till it, we're attending till it, we actually attain to all these things and dogma and stuff. It's like, yeah, we go every now and again, something happens, we do, and we bounce back and forth. But even at the very end, when she was dying, she was like, no, I do not want to go to my local church and have that minister fucking talk about bloody going to hell. I wouldn't put you through that. We're going to just do it in the funeral home. We'll have a nice wee talk. There was a religious wee bit, maybe lasted 15 minutes. And then we all jumped in the car and drove her to the crematorium and burnt her. And that was just,
Yes, so my family, my mom was very, very religious. And I grew up in northern Wisconsin, which was about 60% Catholic and about 75% Lutheran. And then our family. And really the only difference between the Catholics and the Lutherans up there were their beer tents. And that kind of, ebbed and flowed with the seasons, and sometimes the Catholics would have a better beer tent, sometimes the Lutherans would. But all in all, I grew up in a religious area, but pretty moderate. And my mother, like I say, especially was very devout. And how did they react to you being an atheist? Well, before I was a jackhammer atheist, I was a jackhammer theist. And as Bertrand Russell is quoted as saying, that when you need a jackhammer, do you question if it's red or yellow, if it's big or small? The only question you should have of a jackhammer is, does it wreck shit? So basically, if you needed a jackhammer, then whether if I was a theist or atheist, it really didn't matter. People pretty much either liked me or didn't like me. I didn't notice a big difference when I decided that I was an atheist.
Yes, my parents are both very religious. They still are very religious. I went to Catholic schools, Catholic grade school, Catholic high school. Parents went to all different kinds of churches. They weren't Catholic. Yes. So yes.
I wasn't raised in a religious area or a very religious family, so even though my parents believed in God, they weren't regular churchgoers or anything like that, so they didn't really seem to care that I was an atheist. The only very religious folks I ever encountered were Mormon missionaries, and they never really pressed the issue that hard. Whenever I tell them I'm not religious, they just tell me I should give it a try and hand me a pamphlet or something. More recently, the health and safety measures taken by my government in these unprecedented times have really brought out the fundies in my town to protest, but whenever I see those folks, I avoid them.
Right, so thank you very much, everyone, for responding there. As you can see, it's quite a mixed bag of tricks. And obviously, we have quite different stories ourselves. I mean, tell me a bit about yours, Dave.
Mine's pretty boring compared to most people, obviously. Because I've just always been atheist. My parents weren't really religious. My grandparents were just sort of typical C of E religion. Go to church on Sundays. But that's about it, really. Growing up, my parents' friends, I can only really remember one who was super religious. The interactions with her were okay, but she tried to convince my parents to send me to church and whatnot. And as I got older, people would start asking me, why don't you believe? Why don't you believe? So I suppose I have them to thank for getting into philosophy. And as I got older, I started looking into it more, got dragged to church a couple of times, got dragged to the Sunday school that time I mentioned on Mathpig. And I just kept reading it more and more. And then as the internet came about, Dawa became popular in the early 2010s. So I started having a lot of debates and discussions with Muslims, started looking into Islam. Most of those went about as well as any religious interaction goes. It's about the same as interacting with other atheists these days, where you get some reasonable discussions and some that are just very fundamental. No, nothing will change my mind. I'm right, you're wrong. But generally, that's about it. I've just always been atheist, so yeah. And my interactions are a mixed bag, like they are with any group of people.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you're right there. That's something that everybody should try and remember in these discussions. You might have had a bad experience with a particular theist or atheist or other form of non-theist, but even then there's specific types of theist. And even like with different Christians, you can get different types of Christian, even within the same denomination. You know, just because you've had a serious disagreement with one person who seemed like a bit of a knob doesn't necessarily mean everybody in that denomination is. So, I mean, I'm completely with you there on the different experiences front. My story, I guess, is kind of similar to Luke's was in places, but I grew up with my mum teaching me the biblical morals alongside things like Aesop's fables. They always just seemed to be those sorts of lessons that you'd learn, and things like Noah's Ark and things like that were storybooks. And I was christened. We didn't really go to church or anything like that, but I actually asked to go to Sunday school because one of my friends did. Got bored of it. But I also always went to very Christian schools because around here they are a lot better than the normal state-funded non-religious sort of things. And I did have the benefit of a private education when I was younger, and yeah, so every morning you were singing hymns and saying prayers, and doing all that sort of thing. And I started having more and more questions as I went got older, and the more questions I had and the answers that I finally got, they only led to more questions and more doubts. And eventually it got to the point where people weren't able to give me answers, or if they did give me an answer, it wasn't particularly satisfactory. And I looked and looked and looked. And I remember going to boarding school as a teenager. We had to do a church service every Sunday, and we still had, all these hymns and things. And I had, there were a few very religious people, but most people, in England, religion tends to be quite a wishy-washy thing. No one really cares too much either way. So, and by this time, I was definitely dipping in and out of being agnostic and exploring a number of different pagan religions. I was enthralled with things like the magic and all that sort of stuff, and it was what I really wanted to be true. But yes, so there were quite a few very religious people, but even then, they didn't really shove it in your face all the time. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I met a young Earth creationist. And I was just like, what? People actually believe this? No way. And that's what got me into debating online, and through a variety of conversations, we started Answers in Reason, and here we are. I mean, that's a condensed version of everything that happened. But the short of it was, I grew up Christian, but it was quite a liberal version of Christianity, I guess. The schools taught you good science, and the Bible was seen as good lessons to everyone, but certain things were just seen as metaphorical, and certain things were like, well, I don't know, I'm not God, you'd have to ask him.
Yeah, Britain's a very different place when it comes to religion. I mean, when I was in school, there was religious instruction, or religious education, sorry. And Christianity was the main focus. We learned a lot about Christianity, or at least the C of E's interpretation of Christianity. But we also learned about others. And it's just a big part of our culture, really, isn't it? We have a state church, and we have a history of being a religious country. But today, it's just either part of who people are because it's a historical tradition, or just what they do on the weekends. I met one British Christian who denied evolution, but that's it my whole entire life. But I met several Americans that deny it.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting split there. I mean, two things that you say there. I do think in the same way that you get a lot of cultural Jews, I think you're getting a lot more of like the cultural Christian type people in the UK. It's more just, it's something that's there that people accept, but, they don't really think too hard about it. It's just, it doesn't affect their life. It's quite an apathetic attitude towards religion.
People want the church wedding.
Yes.
It's that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, even one of the people that did the podcast with us is an atheist, and he had the church wedding, and he gets the kids christened and all of that. He likes the traditional side of things, and he likes getting the family together and doing these practices, but there's no actual belief there for him. So, yeah, and I can respect that. But the other side of it is, there is this massive, massive, massive science denial that seems to come out of America that you don't really get over here. I mean, occasionally you do. Like I said, I met one young Earth creationist over here, which just blew my mind. But the number of them that you get in the States, from the year I did in school over there when I was 13 years old, I can see certain problems in the education system. I mean, we've got them over here, but not the same problems, or at least not all of them. They tend to start school a year later, and they tend to be a little bit slower with a lot of topics and a lot more general with a lot of topics. And when they look at history, it's only American history. And when they, learn about, they do their geography, they learn about the American states. And I mean, this is the education of a 13-year-old. I'm sure it was different for other people. And even when we were doing maths, they were only just doing like fractions and things like that. And it was like, I'd been doing algebra for a few years. Everything seemed a little bit behind. And yeah, the science education in the school I was in actually wasn't that bad. But again, it was behind. But when you go to the more southern states, you have this problem where religion has such a hold in the area that either schools are teaching creationism alongside things like evolution, or people are being largely homeschooled. There's a hell of a lot more homeschooling that goes on in America as well, which is crazy. I had a friend out there who was a figure skater who was homeschooled, and her parents were very devout religious people, and so that was the sort of stuff she was being taught. It was it's amazing how culturally different the UK and America can be. And it can also help us understand why sometimes the interactions and the way some Americans will interact with theists might be
a bit on the
considerably
stronger
different.
side.
Yeah, like overly harsh. And but when you understand that certain areas, they are essentially bullied into submission, you can understand why they have this pain running through them and why they feel the need to act out that way. It's not excusing the behavior, but it is explaining it, and it makes it more understandable.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, I'm sure you guys have heard us prattle on long enough about our experiences. I'd just like to say thank you, everybody who did submit a video, and on we go with the next question next week. Have yourselves a good one. You've been watching Answers in Reason's review of the 10 questions for atheists. I'm Joe.
And I'm Dave.
Good night, all.
Good night.